And we're back. This is the QB Lab podcast. Another great episode coming at you. But before we start, please smash that subscribe button, hit the like button, give us the support we need. We know 99% of you watching this are not subscribed. So please, please, please smash that subscribe button. Let our show continue to grow so we can continue to bring you incredible content. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. I'm going to just start at the top here. We are covering the quarterback show on Netflix. This is a huge show. Second season, of course. They had the season of receiver, and we'd be crazy to be a quarterback focused show and not talk about one of the, if not the greatest show about quarterbacks in this day and age. Netflix has got it nailed. Peyton Manning has got something going on. So we're going to be talking all about the show. We're reviewing the show. We're going to dive deep into each of the quarterbacks. We got a ton to talk about. Jared Goff, Joe Burrow, Kirk Cousins for the second time on this show. Zach, why don't we break down, first of all, what this show is about, and then how they actually choose these quarterbacks, because there's been some challenges in getting certain quarterbacks on the show.
Yeah, and I think it goes without saying to say that there's going to be spoilers in here. It's a weird show to give a spoiler update on, considering the whole 2024 season is already played out. So from a football plot line, everybody kind of knows what happens before anybody presses record. We'll be spoiling scenes that are in the show, but essentially what's going on here is Peyton Manning is trying to give the average viewer an inside look into what goes into being a quarterback in the NFL. There's a lot of cool scenes about the preparation, about the mindset you have to have, about people's personal lives, and it's really trying to give that real feel as to what these quarterbacks really are. Now, season one was a massive hit because it was a year where Patrick Mahomes won the Super Bowl. It was the first time that Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts met in the Super Bowl. So you had the added theatrics because that was one of the best Super Bowls of recent memory. Like at halftime, you had Patrick Mahomes sustaining an injury. They were down, I think it was like 2 scores at that point. So you knew going into the season how phenomenal the end of the season was. So you get to watch it with that level of urgency. Now, for this year, I know that Patrick Mahomes has a cred on the show. Jake, you might need to look it up as I'm talking here. Is he an executive producer? Is he on as a producer? I imagine when he signed on for that season, he negotiated a pretty sweet package for himself because Netflix money is pretty unmatched in the content space. Do you have that there?
Yeah, he was an executive, or is an executive producer on the show, just like Peyton Manning, who obviously also created it. But yeah, getting him as an executive producer, that was probably the big piece to actually get him to agree to do the show.
Yeah, like if I'm Peyton, though, I'm pissed, right? Because if I have Patrick Mahomes sign on as an executive producer and he didn't do this season of quarterback, knowing full well that they're trying to do a three-peat, and like the Kansas City storylines are through the roof. Now, the other thing is, like, from a content point of view, I imagine the Kansas City Chiefs are pretty tired of being in the spotlight with all of the added Taylor Swift attention. And I imagine that would have had to have gotten talked about on the show, of like how much Taylor Swift has added eyeballs to the Kansas City Chiefs. So I can understand it from that point of view, that people might be a little bit too saturated with Kansas City Chiefs content. But if you compare what Patrick Mahomes would have been to the show with the 3 quarterbacks that were signed, God, did they need it? Because okay, we can go into it, but like Joe Burrow, that was an elite level signing, I would say. He's a lightning rod when it comes to attention. And he's going to be one of the most, he's running one of the most magnetic offenses in the NFL. Like, sure, they're not winning a lot of games, but I would say watching Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins all play together is pretty much appointment television for guys like us at this point. It's an offense you want to see running. But these other two, like Jared Goff, he gets signed on because I think everybody thought that Detroit was going to win the Super Bowl. But Jared, and we can talk about Jared Goff in a minute. I'll give you my take in a second. But if you're Peyton Manning, I think you're punching the air as the season is going on because you got Kirk Cousins unable to get a playoff spot. You got Jared Goff, whose team gets a very big surprise exit. And like, it's crazy. The biggest storyline we got from the Detroit Lions last season was that they beat Sam Darnold to win the division. Like, in the grand scheme of NFL history, that's going to be a nothing burger. And then you got the Cincinnati Bengals incapable of stringing enough wins together to get to a playoff spot. So here you have Peyton Manning thinking he signed a pretty good cast and they got a chance to follow up what season one is. And he's got to be livid that the executive producer didn't guarantee that this situation didn't unfold exactly the way it happened. Like, there's got to be conversations happening in a boardroom somewhere where Peyton's like, Patty, if you're an executive producer on the show, I get that this is probably just like a one-time negotiation of you getting the tag for that first season that's coming about. But if he's not involved in the next season of quarterback, he's not really doing the job of his EP tag.
Yeah, I think it comes down to what the negotiation was. And obviously we don't have some of those details. And, maybe he only agreed that he would do one season. It certainly was, I would say overall, and look, we have this show. We obviously love the quarterback position. We talk about it all the time, but I don't want to entirely spoil the show, but this season 2 was certainly nowhere near the caliber of season 1. And I would say it's mainly because of the cast. Again, it's like anything. When you talk about a docuseries, the story, the people in it have to be super interesting. And I think that they kind of missed the mark on all three in this scenario. I mean, let's start with Joe Burrow, okay? I have my opinions about him. Obviously, I'm not a big fan of Joe Burrow. Anyone who watches our show already is well aware of that. Both on field,
TikTok
off
kind of
field.
got mad at you for your Joe Burrow take, Jake?
Yeah, they didn't like me saying that he's not elite, he's not that good. I'm sticking by my guns. Yes, I'm fully aware that historically speaking, his statistics were incredible. But at the end of the day,
can I try to save you a little bit there, though? Because what didn't make it in that clip is, what is your definition of elite? Because I don't think anybody here would say like Joe Burrow is the top 2 quarterbacks in the league. Like, I think the most anybody could objectively rank him is 3rd, but I think you're saying he's probably closer to like 5th, right?
Correct. Like, I still think he's a good quarterback. Yeah, I want to be clear about this. Of course he's a good quarterback. I'm not saying he's not good, but are you putting him in with the likes of Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen? I mean, there's just no way. He's nowhere near that level. Now, statistically, he may be, but I don't think that that's enough. I mean, it comes up a lot in the show during quarterback season 2, all about MVP, and the Cincinnati Bengals fans are chanting MVP. But Burrow even says himself, like, I am not worthy of the MVP this year. My team is not good enough. We're not winning enough games. It should be noted, like, that's a big piece of that. The reason I consider Tom Brady to be the greatest quarterback ever is not just about the stats. And when I talk about stats, I mean personal stats. I'm talking about overall winning. You got to win to be elite. And at the end of the day, Joe Burrow has had one fantastic season where he led the Bengals to the Super Bowl. But outside of that, it's been a lot of missed playoffs, big injuries. And I want to cover the off-field stuff because that's really what comes out in this show. If you haven't seen quarterback yet, go watch season 1 and absolutely go watch season 2 because it's still worth watching because you get a real good inside look of what these guys are like outside of football and how football is also pretty much their entire life. But what I want to note here is Burrow, because I'm not a fan of his play. I don't think he's an elite quarterback. But then more importantly, he doesn't seem like a good guy. And I even read a little bit about the backstory of the show and how Netflix is really trying to find a way to not only give you some insight into what these guys are like, but also make sure that they're showing them in a positive light. Because that's a big selling point, is that the quarterbacks are agreeing to do this because the show is going to hopefully make them look good. And even with that effort on Netflix's side, I found that Burrow came across as kind of an ass. Not a nice guy, not really a team player. He gets down on the other guys. he's not a big talker in the locker room. I mean, he had his couple moments, but overall, when he's playing well, you can tell that he's mad at the rest of the team. And he almost had multiple opportunities where instead of blaming himself, he actually blamed the team. And it's something that I've noticed that top quarterbacks, they take the blame. The best players in the world take the blame. And to me, it felt like Burrow almost on multiple occasions said, oh yeah, I played well, but the team wasn't good enough. Sorry, we couldn't get the win. Sorry, we couldn't get the W, but I thought I played as well as I could. It's like, it's the type of attitude that as a quarterback fan, as an NFL fan, I don't want to see that from my top player. I want to see him take the blame regardless of if it's his fault or not. So I'm going to end this by just saying this. I do not like Joe Burrow. I think he's an ass. I think he's a jerk. I don't think he's a team player. And even when we dive into him caring about his offensive line, because we know that quarterbacks need to take care of their offensive line. And Zach, we argued about this off air, which is he said that he's done watches before for players and stuff that he felt was less personal. So this past season, he bought them all, spoiler alert, samurai swords. And he was asked, why did you get them samurai swords? It's a bit of a strange gift. And he said they wanted guns and I didn't want to buy them guns. And I thought that this might be more personal because it has a story for each sword. And he played it up. But literally it cuts to the next scene and Burrow's telling a ref that he got his O-line samurai swords and that he made his assistant do all the heavy lifting. She found the swords, sourced them, spoke to the company, got all the descriptions. So at the end of the day, he did absolutely nothing. He's just like, assistant, go get them some swords. I'm sorry. That's not the quarterback that I want to cheer for.
Now, to be fair, though, I don't think that offensive line deserved anything. They played so bad. Like, I don't understand what the motivation would be for them if, they can play as poorly as they did and they still get samurai swords. And I am a big, big nerd, so I appreciated that the samurai sword came with the history of the actual swords. So it was really authentic. Now, if I'm Joe Burrow and I'm worth as much as I'm worth, I'm definitely not going into a store like that and purchasing the samurai swords myself. The fact they even did anything, considering how garbage that offensive line played, if I'm in his position, I'm getting sacked, brutalized week after week. It's a miracle he didn't get injured and all that. And what's crazy to me about that whole situation is, as that was going on, I had to Google, when does Joe Burrow's contract expire? He's locked and loaded. If he wasn't, I think he's out of there in a season or two. This Cincinnati organization is doing him so dirty. This offense, this offseason, they barely did anything. They didn't do enough to bolster the defense, in my opinion. Didn't do enough to bolster the offensive line. Now, they did re-sign T. Higgins, which helps with the offensive weapons there. But I think there's a situation here where, for the foreseeable future, this team is going to be a borderline playoff team. This is a situation with such a poor defense and such a poor offensive line. I don't know how we can look at them as serious Super Bowl contenders. It's not like Joe Burrow can play out of his mind every damn game. I was looking at the PFF data on this as well to see what percentage of the games he played he got a score above 80. What percentage do you think it would be at, Jake?
Because he is in the top, he's for sure in the top 5 quarterbacks. You got to think 90% of the games. I feel like he had a really good season statistically.
He had a good season statistically, but PFF data, getting a game score of an 80 is a pretty big feat. Joe Burrow, among quarterbacks, was second in terms of number of games that got a score of 80 or higher. Out of 17 games in the season, he got 10. So that is 10 out of 17. You're looking at not close to 80%. So this is a situation where even when Joe Burrow had the season he had, he can't just fully put the team on his back and win games, especially when you have this many liabilities at other key positions on the team. The quarterback position, obviously the most important position in sports, but if you have a defense that's letting in 30, 40 points on games where Joe Burrow is trying to put the team on his back, it's a tough situation overall.
And let's talk a little bit about, because you brought something up interesting, is does Burrow stay after his contract? So just digging in a little bit, he signed a 5-year, $275 million deal. Average salary, $55 million, got a $40 million signing bonus, total guaranteeds, $219 million. So it's majorly guaranteed. He's locked and loaded for a while. He's there. He's not going anywhere. So knowing that he's not going anywhere and knowing that he's playing at such a high level, it does seem like quite a shame that they couldn't spend more in the offseason to add some stuff. They've re-signed a lot, but they haven't bolstered anything. They haven't improved anything. And when you look at a team that was, some will argue they were close to the playoffs, but realistically, they were climbing out of a massive hole to start the season, and they were scraping by just to try to give themselves a shot at the playoffs. So I don't understand how they could possibly think that trotting out a comparable roster this year is going to get them anything more than what they got already. Maybe they squeak into the playoffs if Burrow plays even better. I mean, a lot of people argued that Burrow played out of his mind. He may not play that well ever again. The statistics he put up last year, and I believe it was like over 4,500 yards, over 40 touchdowns. I don't think anyone else has even done that in a season. So some of the stuff he did last year, no one's ever done before, and it wasn't enough to make the playoffs. Now, granted, a lot of it is because you're in shootouts or you're down by points, you're putting up, and it's a little easier. And that's where the statistics sometimes get a little skewed. But at the very least, he played incredibly, and they didn't make the playoffs. So it's a real shame that Cincinnati's not making an effort.
Sure. Okay. I do think this is a situation where statistics are going to lie quite a bit. So what they're pointing on the show is he had that phenomenal streak of games with, I think it was 250 yards and 3 touchdowns per game. I think that was the main statistic they were quoting. But if you also look at the plays, the amount of separation Ja'Marr Chase is getting, the amount of things he's doing after the catch, like they make the big deal of that inside shoulder play that like put Ja'Marr Chase in the position to like do something with the ball. And the fact that you got T. Higgins just being complete, like he's a complete nightmare as a matchup for any defender because of his size and because of the way he's able to go for some of these contested balls. For all these throws, it's really unclear to me how much of it is Joe Burrow and how much of it is his wide receiving options. This is a situation where, and I think this is the nature of the point that got you a little bit of TikTok heat last episode. I think that if he had the level of options on the wide receiving front that you're seeing on, like if we're just looking at an replacement level of wide receivers, I don't think Joe Burrow would be getting nearly the amount of attention. He wouldn't be nearly as coveted as a quarterback. Sure, he's making really strong reads. He's making quick decisions and he knows what to do with it. But if you have Ja'Marr Chase to throw to, who's, 7-11 always open and finding a crazy amount of separation, like this is a guy, by the way, who doesn't have a crazy high contested catch percentage. He's got one that's like close to league average and it is to being phenomenal. So this is a situation where he's got a guy that's creating separation in a way that's almost unheard of in the NFL and leading to a triple crown, which Joe Burrow, sure, he's making the right call and he's leading to some really accurate football. But what percentage of it can you really allocate to Joe Burrow, especially when the defense is as garbage as it is and can make it so that the opposing team has really quick drives? They're getting off with a touchdown or with a field goal in such a short period of time that it can kind of default a higher level of time of possession to the Cincinnati Bengals. So you got a situation here where a lot of this can be lying with statistics. You got a wide receiving core that's well above average, and you got a defense that's so poor that you're getting higher amounts of time of possession. So when you're comparing quarterbacks across the league, it must make it a lot harder to do.
Yeah, look, it's an interesting situation because I think no one really knows the exact answer. Is it Burrow? Is it Chase? Look, of course it's a combination. Of course they're both talented players, but who's really leading that charge? Is Chase the leader here or is it Burrow? And, if you ask me, I think Burrow's a great player, but I don't think he's elite, AKA I think it's a lot of the pieces around him. However, he's done some incredible things and he did carry them to the Super Bowl one year and he has been a great quarterback for quite some time. But certainly if he didn't have elite receivers, and Ja'Marr Chase is an elite receiver, I don't know if Burrow is even in the conversation of MVP or anything else.
Like, I just want to double down on that, where I don't even think the quarterback show knows who to attribute it to. Because if you look at all the highlights they bring in, for every play that's like a Joe Burrow great play, there's like at least one or two where it's another player's great play. I don't even think the people editing knew who to attribute some of these surprises to. I think overall, if we're in a situation where that offense is going to be as entertaining as it is, and you got not huge improvements happening to the offensive line as well as with the defense, Joe Burrow to me struck me as a guy who I wouldn't really want to be. He struck me as like mildly depressed and worried about a lot of things all happening at the same time. And I think he's going to stay mildly depressed based on the quality of what this team is going to become.
And actually, before we jump to another player, what did we think about the whole robbery situation? The Bengals finally won a game. Burrow's happy for a moment, and then all of a sudden he's devastated because of this robbery. And then we end up finding out that it wasn't a big deal at all. They robbed his $7.5 million home, and they took some jewelry, which was completely insured. And I know that he tried to play up the whole, oh, well, it's my personal business. Now it's all out in the open. Boo-hoo. So you have to deal with your $7.5 million home, and you have to claim your insurance on your stupid jewelry, and you bail on buying the Batmobile because your house got robbed. It seems a little ridiculous. I didn't feel bad for him at all. I mean, yes, it's sad to be robbed and it's a shame, but like at the end of the day, the guy signed a $275 million contract and has everything insured and has the greatest, situation ever financially. And he tried to kind of make himself feel like somehow we should feel bad for him. It seemed a little bit much, don't you think?
Yeah, I think the show thought that was going to be way more entertaining than it actually was. Like, somehow we're supposed to feel something because his privacy was infringed upon, which, like, if I'm getting paid that amount of money, I'm totally cool with my privacy being infringed upon. I think like, the thing that's more interesting to me about it is that, like, there are some burglars that are smart enough to know that's the ideal time to hit up all these athletes' homes. Like, the other point I didn't understand was, like, them saying, I'm very worried that everybody knows my address. No, we knew your address already. Anybody that knows how to work the internet knows where all these people live. Like, it's no real secret. Like, that was a complete garbage argument to me. But yeah, this is the type of thing that I thought that they were really trying to make the show more entertaining. The other two quarterbacks did not help whatsoever, but they were just trying to find some different storylines from what we were going to get on season one, because we knew that we weren't going to get the same level of playoff hype as we got back then.
Wait, you didn't like when Kirk Cousins went to Cookout and the person had no clue who he was? You didn't like that scene?
No, actually, that to me was the most Atlanta thing I've ever seen. Like, if I live in Atlanta, I don't care about the whitest quarterback in the NFL coming to try to grab food.
And the best part is that she was a New Orleans Saints fan.
Yeah, and they lost. So she was already like sad about that. She had no idea who beat her team. She wasn't a real NFL fan. Like, it was like the most casual of the casuals. Are we just going to go full on into the Kirk? Do you want to do the Kirk Cousins full on here? Because
we might as well. It just came up. It hit my mind.
Okay, so if this was like a typical Netflix show, right, where like it's scripted, where all that stuff is happening, and I had to predict when the quarterback injury is coming, I think a pretty good candidate for like the tell to the audience is the second that the Atlanta quarterback starts producing a list of white female singers. I think like that's the signal that eventually an injury is coming that stops his whole season. Because as like I'd love to hear from like the Atlanta fan base on there, but if I'm the Atlanta fan base, I want my quarterback listening to like the classic Atlanta rappers. I want them listening to Future. I want them listening to things that like add to the level of grit that go toward the team. I know Kirk Cousins is built a little bit differently, but do you think Michael Vick was being like, oh, Celine Dion was a great pull? No, you want your quarterback listening to what's key to the Atlanta music scene and, taking part like one of those fans that's swag surfing in the stands. And to me, like when I was watching it, I felt like, I think it was Kirk Cousins' son who, when like Kirk with his brother was singing Cher in the car, was like, can you guys stop? That was me at the TV. And quite frankly, it might, indicate that Kirk Cousins' son is better suited to be an NFL quarterback in terms of the amount of grit than his dad. Because that's a ridiculous, like, you do not want your quarterback to be the one singing Cher in the front seat after playing an NFL game.
It's funny you should say that because it was one of my favorite scenes of the show. If you haven't seen the show, there's this scene at the end of a game. Kirk Cousins just won. They just beat the Saints. They're out on a ride with his brother and his son and another buddy or whatever. And they're driving and they stop to get some food. And while they're in the line picking up food, they're singing Cher. And like, honestly, I actually loved it. I think it felt very personal. I think it's cool to see a big, tough football player just be a regular guy singing like how we all sing in the shower. I mean, again, maybe I'm clouded by, I love Kirk Cousins. I've always been a huge fan of Kirk Cousins. You like that. You like that. I mean, how do you not like it? His voice squeaks in the you like that. So, yeah, I mean, honestly, I've always been a huge Kirk Cousins fan. Again, I'm not saying he's some great quarterback. I think the guy's a really good guy. I like him personally. I like who he is. I like how he is as a family guy. I find that the stuff that follows him, to me, shows you that there's way more to these guys' lives than football. But at the end of the day, their life does revolve around it. And a perfect example, when Kirk Cousins is finally benched after playing horrible football. I mean, he should have been benched way before that. But I think it was a 4-game slide. He had multiple picks every game. He didn't look right. Maybe he was injured. Maybe he wasn't. Doesn't really matter. And you see the devastation both in him and in his wife. It, to me, that hit, because it was like, hey, hold on a sec. This is just a job. Like, at the end of the day, it's a job and it's important to him. And it's not just about the money. Yes, he signed this massive, I think it was 4 years, 180 or 190 million with the Falcons. And you're thinking, oh, wow, 100 guaranteed. And you're like, oh my God, like, why would he even care about being benched? And you hear him explain how bad and boring it is being a backup and you're not getting to be the guy. And to me, it like immediately clicked. Like, it's not the money. Yes, these guys want to make a lot of money, but they love the game. They want to play. It's just not, no matter how much you and I and the media talk about how much these guys make and how could they care about the game if they get paid. They honestly really do care. And their families care and they give a damn. So this idea that like, oh, well, Kirk Cousins is so rich, he doesn't care if he's playing or not, is nonsense. It's bullshit. He does care. The guy wants to play. Let the kid play.
Okay, so I was a big fan of Kirk Cousins until I saw season 2 of Quarterback. Like, for some reason, it didn't hit me when he was in Minnesota and he was wearing the big chains, and then he's like off singing he's singing too much for a quarterback. It is starting to rattle me. And I understand what I'm about to say is deeply ironic because I'm just a guy talking into a microphone. But now I kind of view Kirk Cousins as a result of this season as being too heavy on attention seeking. Like, it seems like he's doing too much to go outside of the regular part of football and try to put on a certain persona instead of just being a guy that's like in his own tank trying to be better. Like, you would never have seen Matt Ryan do this. Matt Ryan, obviously having that killer season as an Atlanta quarterback, which is why it's an easy comparison for me. Now, he had Julio Jones and he had a very strong team all around him, but you would never see, and it's a similar type of character presenting a similar type of image, but you would never see a quarterback like that doing a show like this, let alone being the only player to do a show like this twice. It feels like he's seeking attention. It feels like he's trying to build a legacy, like coming off of an injury, and he's trying to create a certain type of an artifact for potentially his kids to look back on and appreciate years down the line. I think it's saying something if he's the one most willing to jump at an opportunity like this. It also potentially screams like he's trying to justify potentially the Minnesota fan base why he made the decision that he did. Like, he could have easily, like, if winning was his number one priority, I don't think you move to Atlanta. I think you take the 1-year deal with Minnesota. You have a much better team around you on both sides of the football, and you had a legitimate shot to try to get to a Super Bowl. And I think Sam Darnold did great work in Minnesota. But I think if you're the kind of quarterback where you know you don't have all of the seasons in the world left and you just want to be a winner, it's one thing to be attention seeking and to try to essentially do this documentary and be the only one to do it twice. But to me, it's an entire other thing on top of it to also move on from the city of Minnesota in a situation where you had a system that was playing to your immediate strengths and put you in the best position, I think, to succeed in terms of trying to get a Vincent Lombardi trophy, considering how much he harps on that one part of his house that's dedicated to it.
But that's the piece where I think we don't agree on, which is you think that Kirk Cousins should have stayed in Minnesota because it was a great situation and he had the best opportunity to win. I don't agree with it. And the reason I think he went to Atlanta is exactly what I've talked about here. It's more than just the game. The guy's got a family, he's got a life. These people are just like us. They might make way more money than us. They might be way more famous than us. They may be way better at football than we are, but it doesn't mean that they don't make decisions on more than just the football. Now, there's a couple pieces. One, if he stays in Minnesota, he knew they were basically ready to move on from him. That's not a good feeling. He clearly wants to play. I never said he wants to win. Now, he obviously, every guy wants to win, but ultimately, he wants to play. He wants to be the starter. He knew he had a much better chance that he'd start going to Atlanta. He also signed with the Falcons before they drafted Michael Penix Jr. So he assumed that he was going to be the guy for a long time, like minimum 2-3 years, potentially his entire 4-year contract. Then they draft Michael Penix, and you can see there's a reaction there from Cousins. He knows that this changes things. This changes the dynamic. So he signed a deal with a team that he thought was going to a situation where he was firstly going to a place that he was very comfortable with. He got married in Atlanta. He says it multiple times in the show. He knew that it was going to be comfortable for his kids, comfortable for his wife. It was a good city for football. It's an indoor stadium, again, just like Minnesota. It's not as cold. And more importantly, they offered him a massive deal and basically guaranteed him time to play. And then all of a sudden, everything changes and they draft Michael Penix. So to me, what I learned from that situation and what you start to realize, because we as media people, I guess I could call us media people, is that we're so focused on, should he sign this deal? Should he sign that deal? Oh, who's going to be the best? There's way more to it. These guys think about other things outside of football. And like you talk about legacy, maybe he wants to build his legacy in Atlanta. Maybe he wants to retire in Atlanta where he spent a lot of his life. So there's a lot of that too. I mean, look, at the end of the day, I think hindsight's 2020, but looking back, of course he shouldn't have signed with Atlanta. Of course Minnesota was a better situation. He could have signed a 2-year deal with Minnesota, actually gone to the playoffs, maybe even had a shot at the Super Bowl. I mean, they go 14-3 with Sam frickin' Darnold. Okay? That guy is trash. I'm sorry. We don't need to get too far into it, but Sam Darnold's trash, not a legitimate quarterback, and Kirk Cousins is infinitely better than him. Kirk Cousins for sure goes to the playoffs with Minnesota, and then he hands over the keys to J.J. McCarthy, plays a couple years as a backup, calls it a day. Instead, he takes this shift at the Falcons, doesn't work out. Point being, I love Kirk Cousins. I think he's a great guy. He's certainly an attention seeker. I think that you make a very fair point. Doing 2 seasons of quarterback, singing Cher, the whole shebang, he definitely likes attention. But honestly, what quarterback doesn't exactly like some attention?
If I'm the city of Atlanta, I just want to put this out there. I'm banning all quarterbacks from going on this show in the future. The first season, Marcus Mariota ends up being complete crap. And now you take an 8-figure quarterback and you make him complete crap too. So, first off, the city of Atlanta should be mad at Peyton Manning for what he's done to their quarterbacks. But second, I don't understand. I think you're in love with the Kirk Cousins persona, but I don't think there's a logical reason to come out of the show feeling like he's the good guy here. Now, I'd feel way different about it if he was just like upfront about it and said it's about the money. Because that to me is the only logical reason to do it. Like it's honestly better for his family. Like in the show, we've got clips of his kids being like, when are our neighbors going to be there? You got his wife being like, we really love Minnesota and we were being treated like gold. They were being treated like gold all the way through. Then from an organization point of view, sure, you got JJ McCarthy coming on. Atlanta ends up doing the same thing to him. He couldn't have foreseen that. I get your point. And even like Tom Brady, he caused a whole commotion when Jimmy Garoppolo looked like he was going to be the new guy, and he did what he could to make that shift happen. Even if you get that one good season, if you got loyalty to your teammates, that should matter more than your relationship with the top managers of it. You had a better offense, you had an offense that was catered to you, and you have a defense that's performing out of their mind. Compare that to Atlanta, where it looked like there were so many moving pieces that weren't designed specifically for Kirk Cousins. Like what it feels like happened is you installed a whole bunch of new offensive coaching and mentality based on what they perceive the best practices in the NFL are. It seems like that was the big trend going into 2024, just to try to model after that Miami style offense. Either way, it seems like there wasn't a football reason for it to happen. There wasn't a real family reason for it. Like, sure, they found we were married there. Turner was born there. There's a reason, but like realistically, it is hard to move a family across. Kirk did it for the money, and his persona is clouding everyone's judgment into thinking he's just some good guy when really we see what the persona is like. He's the guy that's throwing on the chains. He's the guy that's singing for attention. He's trying to show his personality a little bit too much relative to what typically happens in this kind of an environment. I think he's more of an attention seeker than a good guy here, and it just so happens that he has the best persona of all time that can mask people like you into buying what I think is crap.
But you know what we can agree on? I know for sure there's something we can agree on, which is Kirk Cousins and his agent know how to get a bag of money.
Kirk Cousins' agent needs a raise. He's already taking too much. He needs the fact that he got that deal after that injury is actually obnoxious. Atlanta should feel some type of way about that for sure.
And even when he signed the deal with Minnesota originally, I don't know if you remember this, he got a fully guaranteed deal with Minnesota. I think it was like 3 years or 4 years, 80 million, which at the time was like a monster number. And it was he was the first quarterback ever to get a fully guaranteed deal. And he hadn't won a single playoff game in his career. So
no, it's insane, especially because like his last season with Washington was one of his worst seasons until now. Like the fact that he pulled that off, like Kirk Cousins' agent deserves. I need that guy. I need him negotiating for whatever pay I get.
Yeah, incredible deals for him. We got one more quarterback in the show to cover, and that's Jared Goff. Now, to me, he's sort of an in between the two because I find that Joe Burrow's sort of the jerk who's got no family, like he's got his parents, but he doesn't have like a partner, doesn't have kids, doesn't seem to be like the greatest teammate, a bit like into himself with the whole fashion. Like, let me just say one thing. Joe Burrow with the whole fashion stuff, like I can't. I'm actually like a guy who likes some fashion. I'll wear some different things. Honestly, like he's got to chill out with the fashion. Joe Burrow, just play football, man. Like you don't need a guy coming over telling you which bag to wear to walk into the game with. Like he's literally holding different bags, seeing which one looks good on his arm. I mean, come on. You're a football player. Enough is enough. You want to buy some jewelry, you want to buy some nice clothes, you want to have nice shades, fine. I draw the line when you're starting to decide what designer bag you want to carry your shorts in. Okay, enough is enough. I'm putting an end to this. That's number one.
I agree. No notes, 10 out of 10.
Yeah. So Jared Goff is in between that. He's good looking guy, takes care of himself, but he seems to be a caring guy. He's got a partner. He's got a serious girlfriend who's gorgeous, by the way. But
They're not
then
married? It's a wife. It's a
I
wife.
don't know. I don't know if they were married yet. I think it
We
was his
saw the
girlfriend.
wedding clips in the show.
Really? Maybe I'm forgetting.
Don't you remember like the dog is in the wedding and they made a whole big deal that the dog was a big deal?
I must have not paid any attention to that. That shows
This
you
is
how
my point.
boring Jared Goff is. Yeah.
This is my entire point, okay?
Yeah.
Have you ever done a Myers-Briggs test
No.
where like it tells you what your personality is?
Yeah. I've done that.
Where it's like,
Yeah.
do you remember what your
Yeah.
4 letters were?
No, but super social, whatever that one was.
Yeah. So when Jared Goff did his, it just came back negative. This guy doesn't have a personality. This guy is the most boring. Do you want to know how I know Jared Goff is boring? We didn't set the agenda for this podcast ahead of time. I just let you pick, and he's the only guy that made it to the playoffs, and you're talking about him last because he's the most boring. No one cares about him, and he doesn't matter. Do you want to know how? Like NFL fans think he's boring too. Like I'm already looking at the fantasy football stats going into next season. Last season, he was something like quarterback 6 or 7 in terms of points. Do you know where he's going in terms of like ESPN projections right now? Quarterback 17. Now I get that Ben Johnson, like there are some football reasons there, but I think everybody is just like so bored when they watch Jared Goff that they would rather not draft him because then they got to start watching him too. And he's just as boring when he plays. Like, sure, he's athletic and he makes some plays happen, but this is just a boring guy that's so boring. They made his wife take on a significant part of the talking. This is just a boring guy that I did not need to watch play football. Yeah, they just choked when the playoffs came.
But there was something exciting at the end. He's having a child. They announced that in the show, and I didn't even know that. Right?
Yeah, and they're gonna name him something boring too. It's like sure.
Look, I think, yeah, I mean, there's no argument. The guy's straight vanilla, obviously. But it's funny that you're getting angry about it because I actually love Jared Goff also. So I've drafted him in fantasy drafts multiple times. I'm a huge
Had
Jared
him in
Goff
our
fan.
league last season.
Yeah, you see? But the thing that I like about him, and this is sort of the opposite of Cousins, because of course Cousins, he's obsessed with his family, potentially, really cares. Family guy, spends a lot of time with his kids, all that. And then you have Burrow, who's the total opposite. It's got no one. But then you have Goff, who I keep saying he's in the middle because he's got the wife, he's got some situation there, right? He only cares about football. He feels like a football guy to me because his life is football. Like the season ended in the playoffs, he's right back to training. That guy is all about football. Yes, Jared Goff is boring as hell. I agree. He's not a particularly exciting player to watch. He has a super boring personality, total vanilla, but he's all football. And he's an amazing team player. Like that guy is always like, whenever he makes a mistake, he's like, yo, my bad. Like you see the way he treats his teammates. He is a team player and he is an amazing leader for that. Now, is he an elite quarterback? Obviously, if Burrow's not, he's not. But I love that he's all business. He's all football. He's super quiet. He just focuses on his job. And not to mention, he looks just like Ryan Gosling.
I mean, I don't really care what he looks like. Okay, so Jared Goff is pretty boring to watch too. Sure, he makes plays here and there, but if Joe Burrow had 10, he's not fast.
Physically not impressive at all.
Yeah, like he's so boring. He even made Ben Johnson go away. But the thing is, like Joe Burrow, sure, he had 10 games this season that PFF scored at a rating of 80 or higher. Jared Goff only had 4. Like this is a guy where 3/4 of the time, it's not like the Detroit Lions are relying on him to be the one making the play. Like sure, he makes some plays here and there, but it's not anything really that special. That's why they've got him graded from the last season as like their 16th highest rated quarterback. This is a guy that's just doing enough to make sure that the game is well understood, that's well in hand. He's got the best running game behind him in the NFL. He had the best offensive line arguably in the NFL. Like some of these trick plays that you're seeing are only happening because they got all the time in the world back there. You got thrown to Amon-Ra, back to Jahmyr Gibbs, back to Jared Goff. Like, the number of laterals that are happening behind the backfield on some of these trick plays is just absurd. And that's because they're dunking on everybody with that offensive line. And we're not going to be able to see that as much in the coming season. You've lost your genius offensive coordinator in Ben Johnson. You lost Ragnow, who is a very underrated, he's super well understood as being important to that Detroit Lions offensive line. I would still argue he's underrated. I don't think we're going to see a better situation for Jared Goff probably for the rest of his career. And I think this show for him is somewhat of a victory lap of how he's kind of getting away with this much success while being this boring. And I just think we're going to potentially have a season coming up here where he's going to face some real adversity and a worse team. And we'll see how well the city of Detroit really has his back once they're not coupling this level of success, especially coming off of a season where they had a disappointing playoff run. I just don't see a fun situation for Detroit going forward. I also have a huge problem with Jared Goff in this portrayal, where they keep rattling off that he's early in the MVP race. Did you see that? Where they were like, this is a potential. No, he's not. He was never in that conversation. And to me, this is just Peyton Manning grasping at straws to try to make this season look like it's more important than it actually was. No one cared about Jared Goff the entire season.
Totally agree. They must have pulled the most random media clip to even have them mentioning MVP and Jared Goff in the same sentence. I'd be shocked. He was nowhere near that level of play at any point in the NFL season.
Yeah, and especially because there was key moments in this season where one thing I don't like about the show, if I'm just being blunt about it, is they don't capture the game situations all that well. You and I watched that game where the Bills and the Lions were playing together. Sure, they had some moments where they were coming, but the Bills had that game in hand the second that the coin toss happened. They jump out to that early lead, and sure, the Bills defense is nothing to, brag about, and they're giving up plays here and there. But Josh Allen had that game so well in hand. I'd be surprised if there was a single week where Jared Goff had a better week than either Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. There's no version of this where anyone with any amount of credibility is realistically thinking Jared Goff is the NFL MVP.
Yeah, no, not in the conversation whatsoever. So let's wrap this up by talking about our overall feelings about the show. I mean, I think it was a mixed bag, at least for me. I'll go first. It was a mixed bag for me. I think that season one was, of course, unbelievable out the gate, something new, something fresh, getting to see behind the scenes quarterback. Obviously, because we have this show, everyone knows we love the quarterback position. We're obsessed with it. We study it. We watch all these guys. So to get to see a behind the scenes on a few quarterbacks is the most incredible thing. It was like a dream come true. And when I heard that they were finally having a second season, I was over the moon, super excited, and thought it was going to be just as good or even better than season one. And for me, it was a big letdown. It was still interesting. I don't want to tell anyone not to watch it because it's an interesting show. I love Netflix documentaries. I think they do a really good job. I think they give you a good piece of what's going on. They give you a slice of life into a quarterback's life. However, unfortunately, these quarterback stories were not particularly interesting. You obviously had two of them not even go to the playoffs, one go to the playoffs and be a total disappointment. And overall, the personalities of the players, I just don't think there was anything that exciting. Even though I really like Kirk Cousins, he already did a season. I didn't need to see another Kirk Cousins in another city and, end up chalking up to a big failed season getting benched. I didn't need to see Joe Burrow mumbling on about designer this and designer that and everyone mentioning MVP for him when he didn't even make the playoffs. And then I certainly didn't need more of Jared Goff, who I like as a player, but he's just boring as hell. So overall, if I would to give season one a 10 out of 10, I would give season 2 a 7.2 out of 10. It was still interesting. I still like it because it's focused on the quarterback, but it was certainly a massive letdown.
I almost gave you a rookie score comment for that first one for season 1 there, but I was going to definitely do that if you did that for season 2. I give season 2 like a 6.5, 6.4, something like that. I think I didn't enjoy it as much as you. I think that they thought that what if they had Joe Burrow in hand, that he'd be able to carry the season and that they'd have enough strong playoff performers. That just didn't happen with Kirk Cousins and with Jared Goff. But if I'm looking at that slate, like when I was thinking about it like as the season was actually happening of what they were going to do and what we'd eventually get to see. And at that point, at the end of the season, I was hoping that we were getting like a running back season, because if we'd seen, like, I know there was a bunch of Hard Knock stuff about Saquon, but if that got followed with a Saquon running back season, that would have been fire. And if you happen to get that season, like on the Detroit Lions, I would have much preferred to see like storylines about Jahmyr Gibbs, because I would have loved to have seen like honest thoughts of, like, we hear all the time that Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery love each other and that like they're really happy having this. They use like that Sonic comparison where it's like Sonic the Hedgehog and Tails. I would love to see the dynamic live though, because part of me likes to think that there's all these little emotions as the season's going on, especially as Montgomery goes down and changes that up. I would love to see the storylines potentially of Josh Jacobs and Derrick Henry changing teams. Like, I think with the running back position, there would have been more fodder. And I think it's very difficult to go back and try to cover a position we've already seen before, because we've seen the injuries. We've seen how they kind of have to go through tape and all the playbooks there. I would have loved to have seen like defensive linemen or even offensive linemen ahead of another quarterback season, but I think it might have been too soon for another quarterback season, especially given that there was some overlap, as you said, with Kirk Cousins potentially happening there. But like, I think it's a good season potentially for a casual, but I think if you were as enthralled with season 1 as we were, and you're following these storylines as closely as we do, this was a bit of a letdown. Although I do think it's good for the NFL. I think it's good for the sport to try to bring more casuals into it. I was hoping that if any casuals are seeing this content, this somehow has fallen into their algorithms, that they realize that we realize that this content isn't exactly what the diehards deserve. Although I'll never say no to more of that football content.
Absolutely. So we're going to wrap this up by saying thank you for listening. And as always, smash that subscribe button. We really, really need the support so we can keep going and talking more about quarterbacks. And we will be on soon to start talking preseason football. There's a lot coming our way. There's a lot of good stuff. And we're just around the corner from another NFL season. I can't believe it.